Well, hello again. Time to do some more drawing. So, my name is Jerzy and Rob. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist, and the links to the stuff I do is right above my head on the screen, and I'll be in the description of the video below. So, what am I doing today? Well, I think you can see what I'm going to do today. So, Monday's live stream, I did some more watercolor studying, practicing with different tools. We did, traditional watercolors in my little travel tin that I've been using a lot for these live streams. And then I introduced these Neocolor water-soluble watercolor crayons to do some of the details like the Baron's wisps in the scenes. I had hoped to be doing more experimentation regarding penciling today, but I couldn't get my materials ready in time. So I looked around at what I had in the studio, and I remembered that I did this Skeletor drawing recently, and I like it. It's okay. It's a little static, though. I felt like it didn't have like the energy that I like to explore in my drawings. It feels very... it's serviceable. It's fine. So I thought, well, let's do another Masters in the Universe character, but let's see if I can improve on what I was doing before. And let's also try out some different materials. I've got today Jerzy and Professional Grade Smooth Watercolor Paper, 50 sheets. Goodness gracious. I got this at a place in Ann Arbor called Hollanders just before I moved to Columbus. So it's a little bit of a, I don't know if how well you can see, but you can see it's got a little bit more texture to it. Right? Which makes penciling and inking an interesting experience. So new materials. Also decided to just grab a figure from the shelf behind me, and I saw Evil Lynn. I was like, I don't draw her very often. I've been doing this series of Masters of the Universe drawings, so they're always in the same pose, and I don't think I had done Evil Lynn yet. So as you can see, I already got started on it, and I could take the action figure away and put it out of shot, so we can just look at this for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pencil and ink this, and then I'm going to try out using the two different kinds of watercolors on it to see what kind of effects I can get. Evil Lynn, the Sorceress of Night. As they say on the Filmation cartoon. Yeah, and you'll notice I'm also using the Filmation cartoon design as my model because I prefer the Filmation cartoon version to all the other ones. Everybody's got a favorite. That's the cool thing about intellectual property with such elasticity as something like Masters of the Universe, where it had like the 2002 reboot. Got the new versions coming out from Mr. Smith, and then that other one from Netflix. I talked about this before. You can see that the very light structural drawing I did, I was using for that. See if I have it in my pencil case. Don't have any. I had been using for a long time Pentel blue mechanical leads, but then I recently switched, and I talked about this in some past streams, the Uni Nano Dia color blue, which a student actually pointed me at, and you can see it's much darker, but it erases so darn clean. So I just did my first little bit of structural business with the Pentel lead. Now switching to the Nano Dia. So I'm trying to do here with the lightning coming out of her, what would you call that, her scepter? Just trying to give this like a little bit more energy and power. I got a head start on this one because I knew I wanted to play with some things I haven't done before. Like I'm going to try to like color the lightning in such a way where I don't actually ink those lines, because this is something I ran into with this drawing. Is these wisps, their energy beams on them is supposed to have a color to it, and I'm like, well, how am I going to do that when I do all the art on the boards? So I'm going to need to practice doing analog color holds. I'm worried about those eyes. Looking okay. my my eyesight is getting such that like I have to do this and look at my preview image to see how it looks. I need to go to an eye doctor. All right. We ready for inks? I think we might be. Only 8 minutes in. So what I think I'm going to do, let me get a little piece of scratch paper to brushes on. Think so. I'm going to practice this idea of not inking these lines, but like using like a colored pen or watercolor to define the outline of the lightning. And I'm also going to do the same on her scepter there. So we'll start by just the bottom of it. All right. Dare we draw the face? I'm not going to try it with a brush. What do I got here? I got a 0.7 and a 0.3. Let's start with a 0.3. See what I get. Here's how the face is coming along. Not too shabby. Let's do... So her helmet is just like plain black, but I'm going to do some lighting stuff on this. So I'm going to just... Any votes on what color the lightning should be? We can talk about, what colors typically mean in comic storytelling, but try to get some dry brush going. I mean, it probably, since she's a sorceress of night, it's probably not going to be orange lightning. Could be yellow. Could be purple or blue. Dude, I did there? I don't know if you caught that. I totally had a tangent going on. It's still there. It's still there. I was going to congratulate myself. Be like, look at it. Look at I avoided a tangent. I still got it. That's fine. It's fine. This is a warm-up drawing. Okay. I'm thinking. I'm looking at that background. I wonder if I want to make this black. I think I do. I'm going to wet my brush real good. The squeezable ink chamber. So, as I'm thinking about that lightning, I noticed Evelyn's got a lot of purple on her. So maybe I'll go for a blue lightning instead. I want it to be something not warm. Could be green. Could do green lightning. Why not? Why not do green lightning? I'll do green lightning. Goes down to here. Okay, dry a brush for the next part. I think I'm almost done inking. Okay, I think we're good. So now, what do I do about that lightning? Let's erase the pencils on Evelyn while I think about how to approach the lightning. I didn't have this planned out when I started before I started the live stream. I just started drawing her, and then I just thought, well, what else could I do to add some energy to this? I add the lightning bolts, and thought, okay, that'll be fun. Now, how do I do it? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to very lightly erase these details. Try not to erase too much. Okay. Let's start with the green of the lightning bolts. Doing on time. 21 minutes. Shall I break out Neo colors? Let's. I'm also going to scrub some of this green on her. Okay, time to break out the water brushes. And all these other tools can go away. I'll admit to being a tiny bit nervous right now. I don't know if this is going to work. Brush get wet. There we go. I didn't put green all the way to the bottom. Didn't over here either. I feel like this paper is a little bit more absorbent than what I've been using. Running out of water really fast. Okay. I think the green highlights are mixed in. So now let's start mixing the colors for Evil Lynn. It rhymes. I think I'm all set. Started doing it. Now I know the Filmation design of Evil Lynn doesn't have that bright yellow skin, but the toy did, and I always loved that. I love the color design in the Masters of the Universe, the original figure line. It's such wild combinations of colors. Like Beastman's like bright orange, and then the bright blue, and then you got Evil Lynn with like this bright yellow, and then the purple. So it's like complementary colors all over the place. So much visual drama on the characters. Now what I'm going to do is take a little bit of red, mix it in with this tiniest bit. That's too red. Where's my tissue to mop that up? Maybe dilute it down just a tiny bit more. There we go. Got the skin color. Let's get a little bit of red for those lips. All right, now the tricky part is mixing the purples. Let's see. So it's a more of a purpley, like a warmer purple for these parts, but then it's the cool purple for like the gauntlets, what would you call these things? What are these whatsits that go on the upper arm? Okay. So let's start by mixing our cool purple first. I already have some over here. Looks like I was mixing blue and my purple. I'm doing the wrong part. I can fix that. That's okay. Oh, her collar's that color too. You can also see a spot in her neck that I missed. Fix that too. So she's coming along. Let's do, what am I doing? What am I doing? Oh, yeah, I was going to mix in a little bit of red with the dark purples, or the cool purples, or shading. All right. Now for the warm purples, which I think I'm just going to use my straight up. You know what I'm going to do? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to break out those crayons again. Crayons. I'm saying crayons like the way Jim Henson said them. Well, when he was playing a character. Someone took the last box of crayons, and I want to know why. And it turns out he just wants somebody to show him how to draw the letter Y. Okay. I think it needs just a tiny, tiny touch of purple too. Well, violet. This according to the crayons is violet. Now we'll put in some of that. I'm going to mix a red and a purple for some of the shading. There's a spot where the color is getting like whipped up by a little bit of texture in the paper. I don't know what to do about that. Yeah. Nothing for it there. That's a weird little blotch. Okay, let's try to do her cape now, which I'm going to start with. I'm going to wash a purple. A whole mess of purple over here on my palette. Then that purple out of my brush, so I can just do some water on here. And there's still some purple in there. Then I put black gouache over top of the purple. There we go. Hey, Pat Dan draws. Now it's time for black gouache. I'm going to try one more time to get some of that. And get some of that area filled in. I don't know why it just refuses. All right. I acquiesce, watercolor. I might go in and paint with ink for the underside of her cape, the backside of her cape, because it's all blending together here. Nice little brush out. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll actually pull this off, make this visually distinct. Oh, thanks, Pat. Pat and draws. Pat Dan draws. Man, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it right. No, this is not my own character. This is actually a character from the Filmation Masters of the Universe cartoon, Evil Lynn. And I'm just warming up for the day by doing a watercolor drawing of her. But thank you. I mean, I'm glad that you like what you're seeing. Okay. A few more touches and I can get to the green lines around the lightning, and then I think done. And I'm only 45 minutes in. It's Pat Dan draws. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Is this dry enough? No, it's not. I guess I'm going to move on to doing the lightning lines next. And then... oh, I didn't do the purple on her staff there. There we go. Yeah, that needs to dry a little bit more before I can go in there with ink. So we'll do... How do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? Take my watercolor crayon. Make a nice thick scribble there so I can work off of that. My brush kind of dry. All right, deep breath. Still too wet. Dry out that brush. Wish I had some green wash right now. Or maybe switch gears, try a different approach. Break out my dark green watercolor and see if this helps. No? Come on, you. Yeah, that is. As somebody who's very new to watercolor painting, relatively new, I've only been doing it a couple of years now. It is something that I'm not as accustomed to. Well, let me correct myself. I haven't been as accustomed to as of late, because I used to do all my inking with Pro Quills and India ink, and there you do like you work in this area, and then you turn the page around, work on a different area while you're waiting for all that India ink to dry. So, but ever since I switched to using brush pens, dry rather quickly. I haven't had to do that as much. I'm back to waiting for things to dry. I'll put this in a more convenient place. There we go. Thank you, Pat Andros. I'm glad. I mean, that's the reason I do these streams, is like hoping that like showing me warming up or working on a project and revealing some of that process can be of interest to some people who like thinking about art. I usually talk more when I'm doing these, but I was getting kind of lost in this one. You know, I forgot to paint. Look at that. I forgot to draw the lightning bolt that goes back here, because I erased too much. Because something has to connect these bolts to that, and I actually had it. All right, back to empty brush. I just wipe it off. Then there we are. Okay. Wipe off my brush again, go back to nice opaque. One of the things I used to do back when we could go out in public and be around other people was I would do these little watercolor drawings like this, and I would hide them in places around town. So I used to be on a bowling league, and in between turns, I would work on a little watercolor and then hide it in the bowling alley. And you can see a lot of them on my Instagram. Which, is that above me? Yes, Instagram is right above me. That's where you find it. But it also becomes like a little document of me learning watercolor, because I originally, when I was doing the little drawings, I would color them with just a box of Crayolas, which I don't think I have. I usually have a box of Crayolas nearby. But then I took a watercolor class and switched to doing watercolors for them. And I always try to hide the drawing someplace where kids might hang out, like over by like the claw machine and stuff. Because the comics I make are mostly for children. I have a couple that aren't, but most of my comics are for kids. I'm looking forward to doing that again. That's going to be one of the first things I want to do, is just go out someplace where there's people, do a cool little drawing, and just hide it. Hang out with other artists, draw together. I miss it a lot. Okay. In the meantime, we have this, right? Break out the wet pen. I'm going to ink in the interior of her cape, because I don't feel like those watercolors or the gouache was doing it. And man, I timed it pretty well. I'm almost at the end. Got like 7 minutes to go. Way. I think she's almost done. What am I doing? I'm drying off my brush on the watercolor sheet. Okay. Let's see if I can get my white pen working. I was trying this before with my Skeletor drawing. Something to add a little extra definition. My white pen doesn't always cooperate with me. I need to get a new white pen. Come on, pen. I think it's almost out. Well, that do it? Doing a few more, clean up some of these inks, and then I'm going to erase some of the pencils over there. I think I'm done. So for those who are watching live, I'm going to be live again in 1 hour for the Lean Into Art cast, where my buddy Rob Stenzinger, game designer and art coach, are going to get together and talk about, you know, what happens, what changes in your art when you add an element of advocacy to your work. Like when you start to say, like, I'm going to do mentoring, I'm going to do some work with nonprofits. And then as far as this live stream, I return Monday. What is Monday? I do this every darn time. Monday, March 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific. Pens do run out the instant you need them the most. That is true. There's a truth to that. That is like a bit of a Murphy's Law thing, I think. Okay, so I just want to put one more little green line on there, and then I'm going to call it good. Where are you, pen? Where are you, brush pen? One last green line, and then I'm done. And how coming in 3 minutes to go. Another element to these live streams is I always try to like finish a drawing in an hour. I don't always succeed. Oh, thank you, Pat. Pat Dan Draws. I hope to see you on Monday. That'd be cool. I don't know when we'll be working on Monday. Hopefully, I'm going to be working on some pencils of a comic project that I'm currently developing. I wanted to have that for today, but the events didn't line up to where I had all my materials ready. So, and one last comparison. So, as I said at the top of this video, I wanted to do something that felt a bit more lively than what I did before. And I feel like this one does have a bit more energy to it. I mean, in terms of the lightning, also in terms of the pose. This just feels really stiff and static to me. This feels more, it's got something in it that feels like movement. So So yeah, you came in towards the end of this stream, but next time. And all of these get archived on my YouTube channel. There's a drawing live streams playlist that you can go to see all the different things that I do. So thanks everybody for hanging out with me and chatting while I worked on this. Once again, the links to everything I do are right above me. rss.jdros.com is like a feed like I pump all my stuff into. All the videos I do, all of my social media posts, all my blog posts, all go there. So until next time, until Monday, the 8th, I have been Jerzy Drozd, jdros.com, Jerzy Drozd on Instagram. Okay, bye. Good to see you, Rob.
Good to see you, Jerzy.
So, yeah, introducing some advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where did this topic come from?
I think it's sort of implicit in some ways, and I want to unpack that, where it's like, oh, I care a ton about a combination of creative disciplines, and then in general encouraging creativity and practice, right? But funneled toward also causes. So I've got this tangle of things that I start to think about when I'm like, well, I'm launching new products and thinking about, well, I could do a scholarship for my workshops, or how could that work? Is it all the workshops? Just one? And what cause? How many causes? Well, I'm already caring a lot about the disciplines. Anyway, so then I'm stuck in this kind of situation. So I want to do this in a way where it's, there's so many things I care about, but one, like for years on the show, my introduction is always it's like put a cup of dice together and a bunch of words, and who knows what Rob's going to say as far as all the things I care about and the things I do, right? I'm fortunate and privileged. I've done a variety of things and lots of titles, and I care about them all in different ways, right? And now I've been focusing and what have you, but like that, I don't know, caring about a lot of things doesn't always doesn't make the best focused communication. It doesn't always land. Sometimes it does, right? But I want to do a good job with this. So I'm curious, how are you, how did this come up for you? You obviously super advocate for comics and visual learning and fluency and all kinds of other things that come with that, making it safe to create. And I don't know, tons of stuff is all woven in your work. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do it? How does it come up for you? And, or like, what's your initial reaction to this?
So what I'm hearing in there, and this was like when you proposed this topic, it's funny. I was just engaging with this very idea of describing who my audience is as a cartoonist. And I found that I had very clear language for who my audience is as a cartoonist. And it came out of the fact that I've done all this work as an advocate through my creative work. So if you go back to, for people who are new to the podcast, I focus on making comics for young people. And that was something I decided very early on in my career, not in any kind of focused way. I just knew that I want to make comics that do for children what comics did for me when I was a child. Therefore, I'm going to focus on making comics for young people. And so I'm never going to do anything rated R. I'm never going to do anything that has a certain level of violence or I would say complex or sophisticated themes. They say sophisticated themes, and I ruffle when people use that word to mean like, oh, it's just going to be a lot of blood and gore. But sometimes it doesn't, like a lot of times it doesn't. Anyway, so I knew from an early age that's what I wanted to do, but it wasn't until I started to work in teaching my comics craft to kids, and then also developing Kids Read Comics with Dan Mishkin, Edith Donnell, and Dan and Katie Merritt, which became the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival, that defining how we want to help these constituencies really helped me understand not only how do I put it? Not only defining that, make it clearer to like create a mission around this nonprofit organization that I work with, but it gave me a much clearer piece of language to define who I want to help, right? So something you and I have talked about, like sort of off mic, is like this idea of branding your business to where, oh, what was that really hyper specific example you had for me where somebody was like a mentor for people with horses or something like that, right?
Even more specific. Yeah. A mentor coach for people who are very athletic in a particular event with your horses.
Wow. So you hear that and you think like, oh my gosh, that is so narrow and so prescriptive and so you're
and wait, and also into yoga. So
that's awesome.
I look at that and I'm just blown away. I'm like, such power. I can't ever get that specific. Help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. So I keep going. Sorry.
So it started with like if you go back to like when I started teaching, that was something where I walked into schools where they didn't have art. And that was shocking to me, right? That was like I noticed a deficit, and a deficit was made abundantly clear to me. These are children who are 9 years old and they're terrified of drawing. Have you ever met a 9-year-old terrified of drawing? That is astonishing, right? And so I'm like, somebody needs to help. The help is needed here, right? So I'm going to make sure that I'm available to help in this way for as many kids as I can. Then with Kids Read Comics, when that festival started, it was because at the time in 2008, there weren't a lot of the kid-lit graphic novel boom hadn't happened yet, and the major comics companies, Marvel and DC, were very clear in their disinterest in serving that market. So we saw another deficit. Okay, these people need help. We need to create a festival that's just for kids and families and celebrate the people who are making work for them, right? So all these events came out of noticing a deficit and then wanting to help them in a very specific way that we had the power to help them with. So with teaching, it's like I can use my gentle and cheerful presence to give kids a sense of belonging so they feel safe in exploring things, exploring their creativity. And with Kids Read Comics, it was we can bring the people to these children to let them know that their community cares about them, and that comics should be a celebrated reading experience in their homes. So, yeah,
so many interesting connections just in that. It's almost so. In some gigs and things I've worked on, there's been like, hey, let's work on a business hypothesis to set up a marketplace. And what does a marketplace do? It makes it efficient for two different parties to exchange, value, right? And so classics, I don't even want to mention the super popular. Well, Airbnb also anyway, but you have this available thing, and then you've got an audience that needs it, but then someone can make it easier and can make that connection. And you're doing that two different ways. You're doing that with the skills of comics and bringing that to children, right? But then you're also doing that with the available media and the industry, and then connecting them with that same audience too, right? So almost like two different marketplaces connecting with at least three different groups. Yep. And I know that you would have primary and secondary audiences in there as well, because it's not just kids, it's their parents and peers and all this stuff. So, I wonder, like, how much of that was a plan, like you saw the problem, like all the other thing, a part of the story is like, you saw the need, you responded to the need.
Yeah. So I think in the first case with the teaching, I bumped into the need. I didn't know. I had no idea what was happening in schools until I took this job with ArtServe Michigan to be artist in residence at 10 different Detroit public schools. And when I saw it, then that's when the mission was activated. It started out as like, this will be a fun way. I'll get to help some kids out the way I wish I had like guidance and support when I was a child, because I grew up in a rural area where there wasn't really like strong art programming. My elementary school art teacher was the high school chemistry teacher who was sort of doing art begrudgingly. It's like, okay, I guess we're doing this now. It had like that kind of attitude in the classroom. So like I didn't have a lot of support in like my interests in the creative arts as a child. So there was that. So like that's how I went in, was like, I wish I had somebody to back me up like that. I'll go do that. And then when I saw how like really bad it was in some of those schools, where I heard a third grade teacher say, "You'll never be a professional if you draw like that." And I had to intervene and say, "Well, we don't talk to creative people like that." It then like the mission, like sort of like, I don't know, it was a seed that like suddenly exploded into a plant inside of me and went into all my veins, and like, okay, this is something I can't let happen anymore. So it wasn't planned. Kids Read Comics was planned. Kids Read Comics was, I had a conversation with Dan Mishkin in 2006 at a convention, and we said, wouldn't it be great if there was a comics festival for kids? Because we both love kids comics, and it'd be a shame if the industry turned its back on them entirely. And wouldn't it be wonderful not only to give kids a really wonderful experience at a convention, but wouldn't it be great to like applaud the people who are actually like trying to support children through their work, right? And then, what was it? 3 years later, or 2 years later, I became a teaching artist, and then I put two and two together. I'm like, this is how I can help, right? Because the conversation I had with Dan was like, yeah, that would be great, but who's going to do it? And then when I started teaching, I was like, oh, wait. Now we can connect with schools and libraries. And then I emailed Dan. I was like, hey, remember when you said? And then, we reached out to people we knew and put the nonprofit together. But I guess both of them started with me noticing a painful need, and me kind of stumbling around going like, but how can I help with that? And just letting it roll around until the idea clicked. And then I went, I think that's the way I can help. And then, I mean, if you want to talk like years later, by showing up in that way, that opened up all new sorts of opportunities for advocacy. Like when we start talking about projects like, seriously, Chelsea, and that project that I do with them, where they actually hire me to make comic books for kids. And then the comics are given away to the school district for free. And then I go do school visits. And then we even teach the kids how to make their own comics so they can continue on the series. You can see there's actually a float in a parade with my characters on
it. That's so awesome.
So yeah,
huge mascots of like Dame Lady Cat and all that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So like this only happened because we were doing Kids Read Comics as a festival event, and then the people from Seriously Chelsea saw me doing it. And they saw me performing and working with kids and said, well, yeah.
And I got to say, in this reel too, for those who listening to the podcast, I mean, there's so many interesting different connections with comics and experience and art and being encouraged and celebrating in a variety of ways, doing hands-on work, engaging with others' work. There's just so many layers of things that I'm seeing in this reel. It's wild. So many different kinds of connections that sort of represent moments of the work of the doing the service, embodying the advocacy. Wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, I don't know. What do you connect with on that, Rob, as you think about the ways that you want to introduce advocacy into your work?
Well, I mean, so you bring up a really interesting point that general pattern is certainly what I've noticed in, I identify with it. I don't know if it's just rationalization, turning something into a story, but if I look at my experience of, I cared a lot about making video games. So I started a business to do that led to doing, some work with others that needed like multimedia stuff. And this was in a time when it was less common. So if you knew someone who knew someone, whatever, that was like, oh, I'm going to demo at a booth at a thing, and it would be neat if we had an animation. Oh, I know someone who knows. And all of a sudden we're doing these little consulting things, making websites. Soon I get into a corporate gig with this stuff where in a world that didn't care about the web. They're like, what the heck is the internet? And I don't care. Money comes in that door. This is dumb. Right. And I thought, wow, I'm glad I'm here. This has options to help. Right. So communication, potentially exchanging, goods and services and products, what have you. And well, also our internal knowledge. And why would I care about helping knowledge happen internally? You just suffer and ask who sits next to you, go away. So I'm like, okay, cool. We'll demonstrate and make this work. So I'm like, the ability for people to share the knowledge and capabilities through the internet is where things started. But then wondering what about the resistance and the humanity of like how hard it is to understand the problem and then to act on the problem and all that. This is when all of a sudden I'm like, how do I deal with this? This is the problem I observe. And then I encounter things like systemic human-centric design, right? Systemic minded, all that stuff. And I'm like, whoa, okay, wow. So people have cognition and our abilities and how we see things. And then I'm like, nope, we can just do this on our projects. We can go talk to our audiences. And they're like, wait, what? Just put a thing in front of people and shut up. And I'm like, nah, but watch this. And all of a sudden, we start to notice, well, gosh, we're getting a lot of complaints about how so many of the things that our company does are just, frustrating for our clients. And I'm like, well, because, they all look very different and are confusing and are built in a way that doesn't include how they think and speak and act in the world. So what if we watch them and learn from them and then incorporate that and also make it easier for everyone? So early in my career, I got tangled up in this whole, seeing the benefit of user-centered design, but also building systems infused with it and also connecting it to a developer audience who could take that and spread the consistency, right? So it's the kind of thing like you'll hear nowadays folks talking about design systems and stuff, right? Well, it's kind of early days of that, early days of content management systems, early, whatever, frameworks. And I was like, I didn't plan on that. I couldn't have told you years ago that I would see a problem and then get super into solving that kind of problem. It doesn't make sense in some ways where 16-year-old me would be like, shut up, I'm on my skateboard. And, do you want to form a band? Anyway, where comics, I see like there's more of, it's like there's a little more obvious through line, but in a way the comment, like I saw the thing and I saw that I could help and it affected me. And I continued to act on that in my career until that was, UX is one of the cornerstone focuses of what I do. Anyway, worked in there too is like a lot of people feel a resistance for doing anything different and activating their creativity and behaving in new ways that leads to new outcomes. And I'm like, hey, this is safe. It's okay. And I've found I have skill in encouraging groups to do this. And that's where my career went. Anyway, go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
But you're in the stories you're telling, you're also highlighting one of the difficulties of introducing advocacy into your work is being able to communicate that value to a constituency, right? So when Dan and I and Edith and the merits of Kids Read Comics first came up with the idea of like, let's do this thing, we shopped it around to different libraries, thinking that libraries are going to be the place where we'll have the maximum benefit in that there's a lot of like incidental foot traffic. A lot of families go to libraries on weekends. They already do like family day events at like public libraries, and they're very similarly aligned to us in terms of mission, in that they are there. They have the responsibility of spending money towards public good. And so we came in with this attitude of, here is something that will be very good for the public, right? Not everybody saw it, right? Some people were like, wow, you just put out some coloring pages, it's like put out some coloring pages and then maybe have kids dress up as superheroes and there you got a festival. I'm like, well, we want to do something a little richer. Whoa, you want to do something richer than us, huh? Like, well, okay, let me take that language back.
Yeah, allow me to tell you, you're doing it wrong. Everyone
Right.
loves to hear that.
Yeah, I know, right? So like that was something I had to learn the hard way in the way I was engaging with some of these libraries I was talking to, was finding a way to learn what they need and use their own language to point back to the value that I had to offer, right? So then this is something you do all the time in your coaching work, right? It's like listening and absorbing and hearing how they're framing things and what language they're using, and then, reflecting that as you bring them towards pointing towards other possibilities. So
and I picked up that style from finding how do you recognize a challenge and communicate that with folks who can come together to help meet it, right? And that work is, I think, you can have projects and design things that are funded with the assumption of show up and make it better. what you do is better. And the thing is, when you show up, that assumes there's somewhere and some people and stuff. There's things that already exist, and you need to find out and understand, well, what caused them to come there and to exist, and how do you communicate and connect with them? And to just show up and be imposing or like, drop solutions, that doesn't work. It takes that involvement and discovering and learning. Like, you will be changed by every darn project and every audience and every like venue you connect with, if you're doing it in a way that cares about including them.
Right, but making them understand, making a constituency understand that you're there to help and that you want to include them isn't always the easiest part of the job, right? I think
that's true too.
That's a very difficult part of the job. Showing them that you have buy-in in some way, right, and that you have parallel or overlapping missions, because maybe, and this is something I've run into, is not every organization has a very clear and articulated sense of what their mission is. Right. So if I come in and I say, I see your mission is this, and this is how we overlap. Well, that's how I see it. That isn't necessarily how they see it.
Exactly. You just used a bunch of words that we don't use here.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so that's where, if you have the ability to build an understanding relationship to see how they frame things and what are their opportunities and goals and things they faced and how they got there. And now you'll have a lot more potential nuanced way to package what you have to share. And let's see, I think this is in the realm of even human-centered selling, right? Because you're trying to sort of close a deal, get a commitment to work together, which in a way is sales. And different people find, they have different strengths in building trust, and some ways are well met with some audiences and some aren't. So, I mean, that is a whole lot of stuff to navigate. If you think about advocacy as sort of this well, what's our next effort, or what is our next project? And here you are at that square again, as soon as you start to work with a new org.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that you had in your notes for this was this idea of advocacy in the form of mentoring, because I think that's an interesting one, because I'm talking right now about like projects that took me years to work on to get them to be as, and in Kids Read Comics, it's a very small organization, and the event is not a huge, it's like I don't know, 7,000 people or something come to A2CAF, something in the neighborhood. It's not at South by Southwest, but it's something that took a lot of work to build up to a point. Because I think the first year we had 75 people come to the show, something like that. Maybe 750. I don't forget. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the point is that there's more smaller and direct ways that one can engage in some kind of advocacy. And when you said mentoring, I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. I have been regularly involved in mentoring young people directly for free since 2012. So it's been almost a decade now. And some of my mentees went on to become professional cartoonists. So when I think of Aaron Polk, who is now a professional comic book colorist and artist, worked on New York Times bestselling books. Started working with him when he was 14, and I have a weekly check-in with my current mentee. We meet for 1 hour a week, and we talk through their project and what's stopping them, what are the stumbling blocks, what are they thinking about next. They give them the different, strategies and approaches to get their projects done. So, but that's another one where it's when I see people online going hey, I'm opening up applications to get some mentoring from me, I realize I'm again in a privileged place in that a lot of my mentees I meet through my classes, right? I teach an 8-week course. They show up as paying students, and then I notice, okay, that one is the one where there's something that they're doing where I know they draw even when they're not supposed to, right? They get in trouble for drawing in class, right? They draw comics on their downtime instead of playing video games, right? That's the kid that I can offer help to, right? And so I'll take the parents aside and say, hey, look, if you want, I can meet with them once a week for a couple of years, kind of thing. So what are you thinking about? I mean, you have been doing some mentoring, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so this list I put in the notes isn't just aspirational. Yeah, I've been mentoring, I would say ever since I was in a corporate job for maybe less than a year. because I have an interest in teaching. And I mean, I did mentoring in my other jobs before I was in corporate as well. Teaching and sharing how we do stuff, adapting and all that stuff. It's how I believe in working. And so I've had that kind of that habit. And so I'd be recognized and essentially assigned, okay, we have interns. Here you go. You report to Rob because he likes that and doesn't find it to be in his way or whatever. Other folks are like, I got too much on my plate and they're not into that. And, to me, I'm like, well, I learn by seeing what other folks, need and want to learn. So this is easily interesting to me and I want to help. So, anyway, fast forward to today, I am, I'm in the pool of mentors for the University of Minnesota product design program. And so, that's a fine system. It's interesting. I'm like when I was at Target, I was, a mentor there. And when I was, everywhere I've been pretty much, that's what I do. But it could look different nowadays. I could start out, do new things with, instead of being, working through a giant institution, I can just be, available as a mentor. And I could think about new ways to offer that. So that, is interesting. Or what if I themed it, right? So what if I got more focused and said, maybe this isn't the right institution for me to be a mentor for, right? That kind of thing. So just trying to see what shape that could take and evolve into. Of course I've done advocacy as I'm someone who, for events that aren't for profit and all that, I will do free workshops. When there's an exchange of value and we're, training professionals, then I do paid workshops. But that's a part of advocacy. But then, anyway, and then this scholarship thing I haven't done. And I'm like, this is interesting. I could do something with that, but I just haven't thought it through yet. So anyway, maybe, we could, come back to that after a break.
That sounds good. Yeah. So let's dig at this idea of what you mean by scholarships, because I have not done anything like that myself, and I'd be curious to hear about your initial thoughts on it and how it lands on me. We'll take a short break and come back and talk about that. So if this is helping you, if this project, Lean Into Art, is helping you think and do useful creative work, a great way to help the show is to support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/leanintoart is the website, and it's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. If you believe in the work we're doing here and you find value in it, you can contribute as little as $1 a month on an ongoing basis. You could also cancel your subscription at any time, but I want to thank 5 people who have been supporting us on a regular, ongoing basis. Ashley Knapp, thank you, Ashley, for believing in us and what we do. And Mike White, you can find Mike White on Instagram at Mike White Robot. And Metal Witch Sketchbook Project, thank you, Metal Witch Sketchbook Project. And Catherine Sugru, who you can find on Twitter at Cat Sugru, KATSOOGROO. Stephen Black, thank you, Stephen. You can find Stephen on Twitter at Black's Sideshow. And a new thing we just rolled out, the Lean Into Art Monthly Lab. So, do you need a place to show your work in progress? We can all use encouragement and feedback. Have you found the gentle creative project pressure of a due date or demo day useful? The Lean Into Art 90-minute lab session is a place where we host a creative group of professionals developing their projects. The constraints give it meaning. It's a chance for you to show up, to share what you're working on and what might be blocking you, and we'll be there to encourage you to find new possibilities, and it's a place to work in the presence of others, whether you choose to share or hang back. Each session, held on the third Thursday of every month, is facilitated by one of the 2 hosts of Lean Into Art. Both Jerzy and Rob have decades of experience in teaching and facilitation of creative groups and processes for all kinds of projects. Each session will be a unique one-time experience, so sign up to reserve your spot for the low introductory price of $10 per month through our Patreon, patreon.com/leanintoart. Thanks to everybody who supports us there. It means a lot to us.
It really does. And minor correction, I believe it's third Wednesday.
Is it third Wednesday? Oh, thank you. Third Wednesday
Yeah.
every month. So at the time of this recording, if you're listening to it right after we did it, you are correct, Rob. It is March 17th from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Central. And then what is that? What is that? That's like
5 p.m. Well, jumping all the way to the Pacific Coast, then it's 5 p.m. Pacific.
Okay. Oh man, I put Thursday in there. Why did I put Thursday in there? All right, well then it's time. Let's talk a little bit about scholarships, more advocacy. So, what are you thinking about?
So, as far as the, I guess, what, why, and who kind of things about scholarships, it's a mechanism to essentially offer a discount for different groups for different reasons, right? So, what could that be? It could be 25, 50, 100% off, right? Yeah, that's it could be sliding scale. So you could do this based on economics. You could do this based on different groups that you want to send a caring signal toward, that maybe you're not exactly a part of, or that you are a part of, right? So I can think of some obvious ones about being, looking for ways to be anti-racist and offer, pro support of Black Lives Matter, anti-patriarchy type stuff, anti-toxic masculinity. It's kind of double negative there, but essentially pro being, kind of masculinity. And then like LGBTQ plus support, that kind of thing. But, hey, I'm a cisgender middle-aged, Caucasian male. So puzzles for that. Right. And then, but certainly no puzzles as far as the toxic masculinity thing. I've been fighting that my whole damn life.
That's that's like, I immediately think like, gosh, Rob, you have already done so much good in that area of showing up as a different model of masculinity for people to see. And like, I feel like that's an area of advocacy that it feels very harmonious to who you are as a person. And especially because you have like, a lot of history with that idea. So, yeah, that
it's a natural fit. I agree.
Yeah. So, yeah, but because again, there's this whole idea of, well, I mean, this is also a marketing thing. It's like, how do you meet the constituency where they are and connect with them to show them the value you have, right? So. That's I feel like I've benefited most from having face-to-face conversations with the people that I want to work with and help. Like, and even in this day and age, like I'm working with all sorts of different groups in Ohio now, and we meet over Zoom first and talk through. And like the thing I keep telling them is, tell me what you need. What's one thing that you hope you'd like would be better after spending some time together.
I like that frame, because that's like a classic tell me what you need. Sometimes folks don't always have that language to really dig into it, because a lot of times you can get into the back and forth ping pong of, like, here you go. What do you need? Then what can you do? Okay, comes back at you. It's like, I can do a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so digging to like a focusing, reason. That's great. Like how would you think, hope things would get better by us working together?
Yeah.
Paraphrased.
Yeah. Yeah. And because, you're right. I just ran into this like a week ago where I said, like, tell me what you need. And they said, oh, I hope you'll help our students feel better about, express themselves through art. I hope you'll help our students express themselves through art. And I was like, okay. Next question.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I learned a while ago not to lead with what I have to offer when I'm meeting somebody face to face, but ask them, what do you need? Where's the pain right now for you? And then I listen and I try to say, okay, I think I hear this. Is that correct? If so, here's like 3 things I could do.
That's classic. That's a discovery conversation, right? So if you're starting a project, and you're trying to create a purpose, so you're building toward, some folks call this chartering, and that that the discovery is where you sort of do some matchmaking and clarification of problems and capabilities and responsibilities and stuff like that. Potential, value, the trade, contract, negotiation, that kind of stuff can be there. But yeah. But then once it's like you've created almost a well, I mean, do these things land into a contract form, or where does that go?
Yeah, usually well, this is like when I'm negotiating with different like school districts to do some kind of work with them, whether it's doing a presentation, an assembly visit, or an ongoing series of visits, 1-day visit, that kind of thing. And no matter who it is, I mean, I have on my website like 3 out of the box workshops. Like I could do one of these 3 things if you want good, better, best kind of thing. But even if they contact me, say we're interested in your monsters versus robots workshop, they'll say, okay, well, now tell me what you hope that you'll get out of my visit. What are some things that you wish the students would get from me being there? What are some things that the teachers are having a special difficulty getting the students to grasp onto or get excited about? And then I use the language, and I put it on my website recently, is like, I want to be an asset to you. I want to support the language that's happening in your classroom. And I tell them that I acknowledge that I am the exotic fruit in the room. It's like the kids are gonna be excited because I'm the visiting artist and I'm a professional cartoonist. Oh, magic words. So tell me what language you're using in the classroom so I can incorporate that, so that I can reinforce what you're doing, so that when the kids say, oh, that's just like what Mrs. Davy said, right? I can say, yeah, she doesn't push you around because she likes to push kids around. It's because she's here to help you. Like I'm here to help you. So
that is classic too. This is like, in consulting in user experience design and whatnot. It's that kind of, discovery and the sort of onboarding with a client, and, finding out mission and purpose and goals and different problems, challenges, ups and downs, and incorporating that into what you do, because you are in a very privileged position in that situation. You're the fresh eyes, the consultant, the newness, right? And there's something about that where I know folks can get down and, have a hard time with, like, oh, you're not from here, whatever. And I'm talking about different big organizations. I know the dynamic's slightly different in a classroom, but there's a lot of common ground with the whole, I'm going to pay a lot of attention to this new person because that other person has been around every day for a long time. And, and I don't know if that's inherently, like, I think it just is. Where a lot of times folks can be frustrated, where it's like, well, we have a UX design department, or we have an art department, right? Yeah. We don't need this consultant. And it's like, well, it's a little bit of freshness. And when the freshness is on your side too, well, maybe that's good.
I think that's also like one of the difficulties is convincing them they're on your side. I have another story that I won't name names, but it was years ago. I was working with a school on a project where, once again, it was doing visits to help the kids make some kind of comic, with the purpose being to make a finished artifact of some sort, right? And the school hired me and then introduced me to their art teacher, who wasn't involved in getting me into this. Now, they agreed to have me in the room. They said, okay, yeah, he could visit. But they were not involved in the actual selection and hiring. So there was like a little bit of a disconnect in my first meeting with this person, right? And so I started walking through the idea of like, well, this is what I'm thinking about doing over however many weeks. And then the students will all be able to like photocopy their mini comics and trade mini comics with each other and all be published authors. And the art teacher said to me, looked thoughtful, and said, I think I would like this better if they're actually making art. And so maybe you could just have their original art on display, like real art, instead of like comics. Now I'm sitting there going like, oh, that was, I don't know if you meant it or not, but that was hurtful. But I fortunately had the presence of mind to lean back and say, okay, yep, I see that we traditionally think of art, like a conclusion of an art creation process, as having an exhibition of sorts. And we certainly can explore that, this idea of like holding up the original art and seeing the artist's hand at work. But in comics, something that is quite valuable as the cycle of making something is the actual reproduction of the thing. And the kids will get tremendous value out of being able to say to one another, "I'm an author. You are an author. Let's trade books." And as a matter of, and I cited like experiences where, you know, how I got work in comics by trading mini comics with the right people inadvertently, kind of thing. And I was like, this is like one of the key principles of finding your way. Like in the fine arts world, you have galleries, you have representation in terms of agents and art sellers. But in the comics world, we do it largely through like this kind of trading marketplace. And they looked a little bit more thoughtful, and they're like, "Oh, okay, I see where you're coming from now." And then it was completely amicable. And a friend of mine who was in the room at the time was like, it was as if like they were holding the book upside down, and I just gently came over and went, "There you go." They're like, "Oh, you know." So I think there's like a real dance that needs to happen, and I'm not always great at it. I've failed at it repeatedly. Of making the people within the constituency or organization you're working with understand that you're not there to be redundant or unnecessarily disruptive, that you are on their side. You're trying to achieve the same thing, the success of whatever constituency it is.
So, and that's interesting too, to learn the story of the organization, where like sometimes folks can come in who are new that don't necessarily have that agenda of nourishing and inclusion, right? And you know, like think of like negative words for consulting to describe like you know, cronies of the boss, right? Or they're just on a gravy train or what have you. I don't know if people say that anymore, but where it's like someone's just coming in and just taking stuff from the organization without really giving value, right? Because so like I can see how folks could be like sour to this, right? Potentially.
Well, then, and also like
especially if they weren't involved and you get dropped in, right?
This is where the Jedi Master who taught me how to teach, I watched her at work one time where she was in a room full of teachers who just were like almost hostile toward us, because it's like, because part of it is like, well, the principal won't listen to me. How come I have to listen to you? Right? They bring in somebody from outside. We're the people who are living this every day. We're the people who know. You don't know us, right? And I watched my teacher like get these people to understand, no, I'm here to help you, and I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to list your pain. I'm going to acknowledge your pain. I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, that sounds so hard. Yeah. Oh my gosh, man, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? Right. And like, well, I wonder if there's a way we can work together to like look for possibilities on this kind of thing. Right. Like all that stuff happened in that room. And I was almost out of breath watching her. I was like, wow, she's amazing. I got to be that. But it was also thoroughly exhausting just to watch like how much effort went into like receiving all that pain, accepting it, taking the blame for it in certain ways, and then meeting them once again where they were to say, but once again, I'm here to help. Let's see if we can find a way to help, you know?
That is okay. I wonder like how I can explore. I feel like I'm going to need, I'm getting homework that is useful. I need to do when like thinking through how to offer this, how to frame it, and think of it as a conversation, a way to discover in a lot of ways, like when you design an interactive experience, you have some kind of mental model about the progression of understanding, right? Where people can progressively get through some kind of narrative and set of interactions. And in a way, I think you're framing up a kind of narrative that I could turn into sort of, you know, interactions or sections of content or ideas, or as far as, instead of just saying, you know, instead of not trying to be thoughtful about the messaging, I could be sensitive to like these different potential concerns and provide a way to dig further into it. Like, so that's what it would look like. So like, if you think about progressive disclosure as a design principle, you don't just drop everything on someone all at once. And you also don't ignore this stuff. You make it available through their participation and exploration, even if it's in a document, right? And then of course you can embody that very well in a direct conversation, but that kind of needs to be turned into something on my web presence, I think. And I think you're giving me good food for thought for how I could structure that something.
Yeah, I recently updated my teaching page on my website, and I put in more prompts to reach out to me and let's have a conversation, right? And so I actually have like a link to my Calendly, like book an appointment with me, book a 30-minute meeting with me. Don't just pick something and email me. Well, I don't say that, but I'm like really trying to encourage, like, let's open up a dialogue first before we work together.
That's a good idea.
So
yes, that's how I've worked with offering coaching. But then why not? That could be a general approach to just how I present, like anything of what I offer.
Yeah, I haven't. Well, no, I've had one taker so far. I've had one appointment just like pop up in my calendar feed, going like, "Hey, somebody wants to talk with you." Okay, cool. And it turned out to be a great connection. It was somebody who wanted me for one thing, then after talking to me said, "Can we do 5 things?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do 5 things. That sounds awesome." But it came out of that interview of like, tell me what you need. Okay, here's what I think I can do with that. So,
yeah, that's a really good point. I am sold. I need to set up that, and also I can see how there's kind of a back and forth where just getting enough confidence to say like, yeah, I'm going to put something on, this guy's calendar, this person's calendar, because I think that this could go somewhere, right? And at the very least, I have this one thing that I feel pretty sure about, but I may have other things that I think talking with them, I could, get more confident or back away or whatever, right? That is a really good point. Instead of being, and for me, I've made it so specific, but, and like these things, yeah, I think they can work together. The combination of offering that kind of like, we could just have a discovery conversation. Here's what I mean by that. Oh, okay, cool. You just go ahead and set it up via Calendly. Awesome. And there's other services too, but actually I use Calendly also.
Yeah, there's other ways to do it, but yeah, that one is pretty convenient.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor. Ought to be. Give us some money, Calendly. Just give us a tip. Give us free
we'll talk
accounts.
About it. Honestly, yeah, and we'll disclose, right? But that's a good one where it's like this. Yeah, it would be so easy that's one of those products where could easily drop that in the conversation ethically, reasonably, with some usefulness for our audience. I like it.
All right. Well, great.
Oh, there you go, Calendly. Calendly, that's a pitch for you. All right. What else? So what do you think of you seem like someone who's in your practice and your business. You've been doing this a while and iteratively, which has this sort of building upon prior knowledge and practice confidence stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And I have some of that experience in different contexts, but now I'm trying to weave it more into my independent business. And yeah, so yeah. I don't feel as set up yet for that.
Yeah. No, that's that part. So I'm in a similar space, but it's sort of, I'm really practiced and I feel like I've got some, I don't want to say establishment, but I've got some credibility as a independent contractor, teaching artist kind of character. To the point where like people are seeking me out now, which is really rewarding. But when it comes to my comics work, like I just don't have that practice in place. Like I have a lot of I face a lot of challenges in terms of proving my value to the comics industry or to publishers or to editors, right? It's because like having a book in your history is no guarantee of necessarily getting another book. So I'm trying to like mine my experience as a teaching artist and say like, what have I learned from doing that I could bring to my comics work so I could do messaging around that's a lot more clear.
I guess that's kind of what I'm doing is mining one experience and also others' experiences, and to try to help, figure out how to incorporate that into other things I am doing, and to just to do it in new ways. So, yeah, I guess, isn't that funny? It's like, it's always easy to just sort of summarize and think, well, you took care of that, and then show up and say, well, no, guess what? There's another threshold, edge, goal, thing, place to go, and you got to start, in some ways, start over. It feels like.
Yeah. So in terms of like finding, like, I guess I would go back to this idea of the hyperspecificity and starting from that point, starting at the hyperspecific point where you feel like you have the most clarity in terms of what your offer is. Because another thing that happens in my experience is, even though on my website it clearly says I teach children and teens, like the 3 sample workshops I put up there are for children and teens, I still get approached by people saying like, do you do adult workshops too? So
and you really don't? Is like, you're like, nope.
No, it depends. It depends on what they're asking for. And that's where I'll say, well, what do you need? And they say, we're looking for somebody with like, who will teach like a really in-depth illustration course. I'm like, I'm not your guy. I'm not, right? I teach visual storytelling. You want somebody with a more traditional illustration background to teach an illustration course, right?
Okay. So maybe we could revisit hyperspecificity, because it's always a sticking point for me.
Well, maybe this will give you I actually wrote out I wrote a hyper-specific audience statement of like who, like the big why of what I do as a cartoonist. Now, this is not a teaching artist. I'm just stripping everything else away. It's like, who do I make comics for based on the hyper-specificity I found through my teaching arts. And I wrote this, and I wonder if this will be helpful at all. As I say, I make comics and graphic novels to help children who don't have the emotional support they need. These imaginative works are products of my creativity and whimsy, but their creation is guided by a sincere and deep desire to be of service to readers. That service can be in the form of instruction, inspiration, having their experience validated, and the thoughtful exploration of problems they face. I make comics with the intent of helping children face the world with courage and optimism. So, there's more buried in that description than probably like what I've publicly disclosed in my past, right? But I wonder if like finding that really personal spot of, this is my lived experience, this is where I feel the most fire, and where I've done the most work as a creative person, and start there and work your way out.
Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. I still don't see an easy path to get there. I'm going to have I have to say, like, your statement was really quite clear and very useful and inviting. And I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to it to sort of see what comes out for me. Because there's so much, to be honest, I mean, I have some planning and things I care about in my career, but like, I like to just show up and help. And and I like to spread the way that I help to others who care to also make that part of their approach. That's it, right? So web development, cared about that. Human-centered design, that one's carried through a lot more longer, but I've, still care about web development. And anyway, so that's the tricky thing, is I've had the fortune and privilege to be in different places. One of the things about my personality where I get hired and brought into places is that I'm so comfortable being in piles of ambiguity where stuff isn't established.
Okay.
And so also encouraging people to help find clarity, find purpose, and start making an important difference for the people that they're serving, and start to include them and start to evolve and all that. But like, that's so hand wavy, but when someone has that need, I get the call, from my network and people who know me and stuff. And it's this whole combination of things that, as far as when I've helped and like been as much as my whole self as possible in certain gigs, and that, anyway, you've been jumping at reacting. So
Well, what I heard in
What
that
happened?
right there is like so somebody standing outside, you're in the weeds there, is like I hear like
Yeah.
you you feel inspired to help when you see people who are having difficulty having clear conversations about what they're even doing together, right?
Mm.
Have you been in an office meeting and it's full of confusing, jargony language, unclear, untested thoughts, maybe a little bit of frustration with one another? You just don't feel good after your office meeting. I'm
Mm.
here to help find clarity so that you can work together harmoniously, right? Like so that was like that's so ultra first draft. It's garbage. But like what I'm pointing towards is like you said something about you feel at ease being in a room full of ambiguity. And I
Mhm.
think that's something that you're talking about the pain point. The pain point is like we don't even know how to talk about what we do. We don't even know what our mission
It's a
is.
little, yeah. Well, it's a bit of a, it's me not talking about what I do, but also it really takes a certain kind of person to recognize that situation.
That's true.
And, and then anyway, so
Yeah.
we're, we're like, I need someone who's a catalyst to help others start connecting more and
But I think
collaborate more healthily. Right.
in there too is this idea of how you can how you have shown up and consistently represented an alternate model of authority and masculinity, right? You don't show up as a commander. You show up as you're the old wizard in the woods that the heroes should have listened to. Right? Going back to the Ashland stories, you got like the wizard in the woods is like, hey, I got some help here that I can help you with before you go on your quest. Shut up, old man. I know what I'm doing. And they get eaten. And then the littlest brother comes up who actually listens to the creatures of the forest. Like, okay, well, what do you got? And then he gives them exactly what he needs to win over the dragon kind of thing. So,
But okay, fair enough. I like the wizard metaphor, whatever, but like also with utter absence of hierarchy, right?
yeah.
Like being in we're in a thing together, and that's what
Yeah.
and we adapt together, and it's not a hierarchy thing. It's maybe we have different areas of responsibility or different skills we bring, but it's not.
So is you meeting them where they are? You're here to crush the hierarchy.
It's something hierarchy. I embrace it when it serves the purpose, but if it serves egos, I often help people fight that.
Yeah. But
And that's because if you really, if you want different outcomes, you have to behave differently, and that stuff is scary.
yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it's actually awesome. let's try. What if we tried? What if? Don't believe enough yet? Well, okay, let's do some other things for a while. You feeling ready yet? All right. Yeah. Mm. Okay, so we need to do another break and have some other wonderings about this.
Okay. So yes, let's take a moment and say if this is helping you think and do create what is it? If this is helping you think and do useful creative work, if you found this discussion provoking and maybe a little bit inspiring, you could help the show. And a great way to help the show would be to interact with the stuff, the products that we make. And the product that I make that I hope you'll check out is a free one, actually. It's called the 4 Million Years Later podcast. And what is the 4 million years later podcast? It is the answer to the question, does creativity thrive in freedom or in constraints? It is a story analysis podcast wherein the subject of the study is the 1980s Transformers cartoon. We watch an episode a week and dig deep to explore the story's structure and meaning. We infer the writer's intentions and synthesize all those things within the context of conflicting needs of a daily television show explicitly designed to advertise toys. You can find it at 4millionyearslater.com or search for 4 Million Years Later in your favorite podcatcher.
Well, and if you would, another way to support the show is to buy my workshop, Listening Like a Coach. It's a place where you can learn methods for coaching conversations. You can help folks get unstuck with their projects and goals. You can learn some basic methods to get started, but also advanced things for, listening in new ways, seeing the different options for the kinds of conversations you have, and then purposefully offering someone a kind of conversation that is, it's called coaching. And then you're there to not tell them what to do. You're there to like help you listen and absorb and give this kind of gift of like really deeply attentive attention that it lets you explore and assist in the navigation instead of putting your own agenda into what you think they should do next. That makes sense for consulting. That may make sense for some kinds of leadership and stuff, or even friends reacting and as just, caring humans. But then again, listening like a coach is where you can help them navigate through their own problems. And that's what this workshop is for. You can get it at, just point your web browser to gum.co/LLACWS. So listening like a coach workshop, LLACWS. I mean, are you someone who people come to ask for advice, or do people ask to bounce ideas off of you and get your thoughts on a decision? Listening like a coach is a great mechanism that you could offer them. And you could just do that through this, get some practice and experience with this workshop at gum.co/LLACWS. And please note, you can get this at a very approachable price of $19 for the video workshop plus the worksheets. Or we could do a one-on-one live question and answer session for 30 minutes after, and you also get the video workshop, right? So you can do upgrades for you or even your teams or org for up to 30 people. Go to that website, gum.co/LLACWS, and you'll get all the options to get your right version of listening like a coach.
Super. And I would say this would also be useful for people who maybe want to try out the teaching arts, because I think a lot of being a teaching artist, at least my approach, is listening like a coach. Leaning in, having private consultations with the students to listen carefully to what they're trying to achieve, and then offer them a fleet of options that they can try out right then and there. Empowering students rather than just simply telling them what to draw. Anyway.
That's an interesting connection. Yeah, good point. And leaderships, you can show up in so many different ways, right? And it's not mutually exclusive as far as, I mean, you just, there are different tools. Like when you teach, you don't just have one approach. I'm like, gosh.
I've also seen you interact with people at festivals, and you're kind of always listening like a coach, right? Not to push anybody or guide anybody, but you're always doing that really kind of thoughtful, careful listening and speaking back what people have said to show that not only that you're listening, but to check for comprehension. And I think people always feel like warmer in your presence, So I would argue that it also has, like, if you're kind of awkward at industry meetings, that would be another reason to get this product, right?
I need to hire you on my marketing team. My current guy is not so great.
No, but I just that's something that I've talked about with people a lot about, my work as a teaching artist has made it I've gotten so much practice at listening carefully to what somebody's saying that it does make me I feel like it's really easy for me to engage in trade with stakeholders because I'm good at hearing what they said and proving that I heard what they said. I show up as a very compassionate and interested person. And that builds trust so darn fast, right? And it's not a trick. It's not me saying look at these naive fools who I put a gentle smile on my face and they give me money.
Yeah, I dare you to fake it. Honestly, go ahead.
Yeah.
You will fall down the steps with all the cream pies and hopefully have some humility at the end of it, because you can't having that much attention because you need to take your own agenda out, fully out. Yeah, totally. When you're doing various kinds of coaching, people call you because of your sort of specificity, but also, so you may have to. It may be healthy and appropriate to respond to someone wants a particular input or advice, or tell me what you did when you faced this kind of thing, or what have you. But that's a quick little visit. That's not. And now I've got my 3 tricks to, cause someone to get into their kind of cognition where they're overly emotional or overly afraid. And now, I got you, which
we're kind of like working off of the ad that we just did, but that also ties into this whole idea of being an advocate, right? Like this is something that you can't fake it.
Mm.
You have to mean it. This is in that movie about a boy, right? Like you can't like when Hugh Grant's character like goes to volunteer at what was it, Amnesty International, answering the phone, and he keeps screwing it up because he keeps getting distracted into flirting with the girls that he's talking with on the phone when he's trying to like solicit money to help like causes. He's like, yeah, that's the problem. You have to mean it when you help people.
Oh,
So, um,
gosh, I have to admit I haven't seen that movie still, and I'm like, I've written that on my list multiple times. I'm going to watch it. It sounds so yeah,
it's
so touching and worthwhile.
you watch it like a relatively worthless person discover what value is in the story. So like that's what I find charming about it. And he knows he's a worthless human being at the beginning. So anyway, is there anything else that we want to reflect on before we close this out? I feel like this was opening the bottle to probably a larger conversation about like how do you show up in the world to offer the help for the constituency you want to help in a way that engenders trust and clear understanding and real communication of need and service.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of what we're talking about, like communicating visually, storytelling. I mean, you could package that up for so many kinds of audiences, or human-centered design, listening like a coach, and doing like facilitation methods and all that. Like they can fit lots of kinds of audiences. So the advocacy that there's almost a hurdle to a threshold to clear regarding the specificity about the discipline itself, the core, sort of the crux of like, this is the main value I exchange as a creative business, right? And I'm about this thing or these things, right? Fair enough, which is interesting. So I may need to have a different story based on each endeavor, like each creative project, in a way of like my workshops might have it's an advocacy agenda and method. And then my video games may have an advocacy agenda and method. Yeah, and so that's interesting too. Right now I'm focused on the workshops. I'm not trying to solve all things at once.
No.
But even then, so you've got that core discipline, but then you have the other signals, like you found a way to weave it all together in your statement.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's funny is that when I avoided that statement for a long time because I thought if I go to any publisher and say that this is my audience, I've just talked myself out of a sale because they're gonna say, why don't you want everybody to read it? Why don't you want as many people as possible? But actually, that's not true either because publishers, at least in like the traditional graphic novel publishers, they're looking for a very specific niche audience, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I was very nervous about naming it that specifically. Like this group of children are the people that I want to make books for, right? So, yeah. Well,
it's hard, and so like, and part of my signal that I need to pull apart and find like what's noise and whatnot is that just because I have had a past and a path of applying these skills in certain audiences, it doesn't mean they're for my forever audience or something, right? And that's a puzzle for me because it feels awesome to work with adults to help them be more creatively confident and start to do more inclusive things and adopt more rigorous methods that are still very collaborative and inclusive that get them to make more rich decisions, right? And it's actually super satisfying. I feel great about helping in that way. But I'm like, I don't know, is that my forever audience, or is that, I don't know. I just made up that thing, forever audience. Is there a forever audience? I don't know. I said it too many times. Now it doesn't mean anything.
Oh, I'll look forward to coming back to this one and digging into it more. And I am curious how everybody else feels about this discussion that we had. Like, what are you thinking about in terms of like introducing advocacy into your creative work? What are some things that you can imagine going wrong? What are some things that you can imagine would be difficult for you? How can you name your audience specifically, right? So with that, I guess.
That's a good conversation to totally hear from everyone about. Because I mean, if this is a sticking point for you, we could do just some community talking about it, right? Not free consulting. We have some commonality, common ground, a reason to, throw a message in a chat. Such as the Lean Into Art Discord.
Where the Lean Into Art Discord is at leanintoart.com/discord. And that is where you can go so that we can all work together to become as strong as possible. We'll help each other become as strong as possible. Did I say it right? Did I get the quote right?
Yeah. And I think that's got to be part of my thing too. Like, I'm like, gosh, you've been waiting to talk with me about this. You're like, throwing all these good ideas. And I appreciate it. I want to pick it all up and try to put something together.
This is something I care a lot about, and I get really impatient sometimes with people when it's like, don't you want to help people? And I meet these artists who are like, I don't think about my audience when I make my work. I'm like, I never stop thinking about my audience when I make my work. Like, how do you do it?
That's a good buddy movie, right?
The artiste and the journeyman.
You're a terrible roommate. Shut up.
But which one of us is David Spade and which one of us is what's his name? Tommy Boy. Chris Farley.
I don't know, honestly. Dang it.
Well,
we all know specific again. It's my hang up, dude. Stop it.
Okay, I got to drop it.
I'm joking.
Well, I would be Chris Farley because I'm the good one. Anyway, so we record this show.
That's fair enough, actually. I agree.
We record this show every other week. And we stream it all over platform. We stream it on all the platforms and the Discord, so you can follow us everywhere and wherever there's the name Lean Into Art. Once again, don't forget to join our Discord at leanintoart.com/Discord. The audio podcast is at leanintoart.com. Until next time, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I'm Rob Stenzinger, also of leanintoart.com, and I'm Rob Stenzinger, places like Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.